Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of emotional intelligence.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys sent in a really great PDF called emotionalintelligence.pdf, and we're going to be breaking that down today.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
so
excited.
me too. And I think a lot of people think that emotional intelligence is kind of this like touchy-feely thing,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
but it's really not.
No, not at all.
So how can we kind of reframe that for people who might think that it's just like, all about your feelings and stuff?
Yeah, well, the research on emotional intelligence actually spans over 30 years.
Wow.
So it's not something that's just kind of come up recently. And it's got a lot of science backing it up. And really what it boils down to is that it's not about your emotions being weaknesses. It's about recognizing that your emotions are powerful tools
Right.
that can actually lead to a lot of success in different areas of your life. So
Okay.
that's something important to keep in mind.
So if we're looking at this PDF we've got here,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the key takeaways about emotional intelligence? Like what should people really know right off the bat?
So the PDF actually breaks emotional intelligence down into 4 core skills or components.
Yeah.
And these are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Okay, so 4 areas.
4 key areas. Yep. And,
That
we're going to dig into each of those in a little bit more detail, but just to give you a quick overview, self-awareness is really about understanding your own emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses.
like knowing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
like that foundation.
Right.
Self-management then is about how you manage those emotions.
Okay.
How you control your impulses, how you adapt to change.
So that's kind of like the application of
Yeah. Yeah. Once you're aware, then you can manage.
Got it.
Social awareness, that's about understanding other people's emotions, their needs, their concerns.
So it's kind of like reading the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Picking up on those cues. And then relationship management, it kind of builds on all of that.
So that's how we use it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Mm.
about building and maintaining healthy relationships, managing conflict effectively, and fostering teamwork.
Wow, it's a lot.
It is. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
But it's super fascinating and really important.
Okay, so let's break down each of these areas a little bit more, starting with self-awareness.
Okay. Sounds good.
Why is it so important to be self-aware, and like, what are the benefits of that?
So I think one of the best ways to think about self-awareness is to imagine you're a pilot,
Okay.
right? You're in the cockpit of a plane.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. So in order to fly that plane safely and effectively, you need to understand what all those instruments and gauges are telling you.
Right.
Okay? You need to know your altitude, your speed, your fuel levels, all of that.
Makes sense.
Self-awareness is kind of like that for your emotions. It's about understanding what's going on inside of you so that you can make better decisions.
So we're not just flying blind.
Yeah.
We're actually looking at our instruments and knowing like, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I should react.
Yeah, and when you're self-aware, you're less likely to get hijacked by your emotions in difficult situations.
Oh, that's good.
If you know that you tend to get really angry when you're under pressure, you can start to develop strategies for managing that anger in a healthier way.
Right.
So you don't end up saying or doing something that you regret.
Yeah. I feel like I need that.
Right, we all do.
Yeah.
It's a constant process, but
So self-awareness is really about understanding how our emotions work and then how we can kind of use them to our advantage instead of letting them control us.
exactly. It's about being in the driver's seat.
I like that.
Yeah.
So how can we actually improve our self-awareness? Like what are some tangible steps that people can take?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different techniques that you can use, but one that's often recommended is journaling.
Oh, journaling.
Yeah, it's a really simple but powerful way to start paying attention to your emotions and how they influence your behavior.
Okay, so what do we journal about?
So you can write about anything that's on your mind, but try to focus on situations that trigger strong emotions for you.
Like if I just got really mad at somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So you could write about what happened, how you felt, what you did, and what the consequences were.
Okay.
And by examining those patterns over time, you can start to identify your triggers and develop healthier responses.
So it's almost like we're keeping a log of our emotional experiences so that we can start to see those patterns and then figure out how to maybe change them or just be more aware of them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like creating a map of your emotional landscape.
I like that.
Yeah. And another really powerful tool for increasing self-awareness is mindfulness.
Oh, mindfulness.
Yeah, have you ever heard of that?
I have. I've heard of mindfulness, but I'm not really sure what it is.
Yeah, so mindfulness is basically about being fully present in the moment without judgment.
Okay.
It's about noticing your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
So kind of just observing what's going on inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways to practice mindfulness.
Like what?
There are tons of apps and guided meditations out there,
Right.
but you can also do simple things like taking a few deep breaths
Okay.
or just paying attention to your senses.
Like, what do I see? What do I hear?
Exactly. Yeah, what do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel?
Interesting.
Yeah, and the more you practice mindfulness, the more aware you become of your thoughts,
Yeah.
your feelings, your bodily sensations. And, have you ever noticed that when you're stressed, you might clench your jaw or furrow your brow?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so mindfulness helps you tune in to those subtle bodily cues, which are often the first indicators of a shift in your emotional state.
So it's almost like a warning system.
Exactly. Yeah, it gives you that heads up
Okay, like
so that you can start to manage those emotions before they spiral out of control.
so mindfulness is about being present, and then self-awareness is about like understanding the why behind our emotions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. I feel like we're really starting to unpack this emotional intelligence thing.
Yeah, we're making good progress.
Okay, so we've talked about self-awareness and how it's like the foundation of emotional intelligence.
Right.
But what about self-management? That was the second skill you mentioned.
Right. Yeah. So self-management is all about how you handle those emotions once you're aware of them.
Okay, so it's like the application.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about having that steady hand on the controls, even when things get turbulent.
Because we all know life gets turbulent.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So how do we do that? How do we manage our emotions effectively?
So one technique that's really helpful is called self-talk.
Self-talk.
Yeah, have you ever heard of that?
I think I have, but can you explain it?
Yeah, so self-talk is basically the way you talk to yourself in your head.
Oh, okay.
And we all do it all the time.
So like little voice in my head.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is that a lot of times that little voice can be pretty negative.
Oh, for sure.
It might tell you that you're not good enough or that you're going to fail.
Yeah, like I can't do this.
Exactly. And when you start to believe those negative thoughts, it can really impact your mood, your behavior, your performance.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is, yeah. So the key with self-talk is to become aware of that inner critic and then consciously choose to replace those negative thoughts with more positive and empowering ones.
So like if my inner critic is saying I can't do this, I would tell myself I can do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you might say something like, this is challenging, but I've faced tough situations before and I can find a way through this.
Okay, so we're basically reframing those negative thoughts into something more positive.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes practice, but over time, it can really make a difference.
And that's self-management.
That's one aspect of it. Yeah, there are a lot of other tools and techniques, but self-talk is a great place to start.
Okay, this has been super insightful, but I think we need to take a quick break. We'll be back soon to explore the other two skills of emotional intelligence, social awareness, and relationship management.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about self-awareness and self-management, but now let's move on to social awareness.
Okay, so we've mastered our own emotions.
Right.
Now we need to figure out how to read other people's.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like tuning into the signals from those other planes in the sky.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? How do we become more socially aware?
Well, it starts with paying attention to those nonverbal cues.
Like body language and facial
Yes,
expression.
exactly. Yeah, and tone of voice, too.
Right.
All of those things can give you valuable information about how someone is feeling, even if they're not explicitly saying it.
Okay, but what about when we're communicating online?
Right, that's a great question because a lot of our interactions these days are happening through screens.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't always have those nonverbal cues to rely on.
So how do we make sure we're not misinterpreting things?
Well, one key is to pay attention to the emotional subtext of what you're reading.
What do you mean by that?
So think about it this way. When you're talking to someone face to face, you can usually tell if they're being sarcastic or if they're upset, even if they're not saying those things directly.
Right.
But online, it's not always so easy.
Yeah, you can't hear their tone of voice.
Exactly. So you have to look for other clues, like the words they're using, their
Yeah.
punctuation.
Oh, like if they use a lot of exclamation points.
Exactly. Yeah, that could be a sign that they're excited or maybe frustrated.
Okay, so we have to be more like detectives online,
Yeah, in a way.
looking for those clues.
Exactly.
What about emojis?
Oh, yeah. Emojis can definitely play a role in conveying emotion online. They
Right.
can add that extra layer of nuance that might be missing from text alone.
But I feel like emojis can also be misinterpreted.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's important to use them thoughtfully and make sure that your intended meaning is clear.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure our emojis are saying what we want them to say?
Well, I think it starts with knowing your audience.
Okay.
If you're sending an emoji to a close friend, you can probably be a little more casual.
Right.
But if you're sending an emoji to a colleague or a client, you might want to be a bit more formal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's always a good idea to err on the side of caution.
Right.
If you're not sure if an emoji is appropriate, it's probably best to just leave it out.
Okay, so we're paying attention to the words, the punctuation, the emojis. What else can we do to improve our social awareness online?
Active listening is crucial.
Oh yeah, active listening.
Yeah, have you ever talked to someone who's clearly not listening to you?
All the time.
It's so frustrating, right?
Yeah.
And it's even easier to do that online because there's so many distractions.
Right, you could be checking your email or scrolling through social media while you're on a video call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it takes a conscious effort to really focus on the other person and what they're saying.
So how do we do that? How do we become better active listeners online?
Well, first of all, minimize distractions. Close those other tabs, put your phone away, and really try to give the other person your full attention.
Okay.
And ask clarifying questions.
Like what?
If you're not sure about something they said, or if you want to make sure you understand their perspective,
Right.
just ask.
Okay, that makes sense.
And don't be afraid to acknowledge their emotions.
Like if they seem upset.
Exactly. Yeah, you could say something like, I'm sensing some frustration in your message. Is everything okay?
Okay, so we're showing them that we're listening and that we care.
Exactly. And that can go a long way in building trust and rapport.
Okay, so active listening is key, but I feel like empathy is also really important for social awareness.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person.
Right.
And it's essential for building strong relationships, both online and offline.
So how do we practice empathy, especially when we're interacting with people online?
Well, one simple but powerful practice is to ask yourself, what might this person be feeling right now? So, for example, if a colleague sends you a curt email, instead of getting defensive or assume they're being rude,
Right.
pause for a moment and consider what might be going on in their world.
Like maybe they're just having a bad day.
Exactly. Yeah. Or maybe they're under a lot of stress at work or at home.
Okay.
And by taking a moment to consider their perspective, you can avoid jumping to conclusions and respond with more compassion and understanding.
That's a really good point. It's so easy to take things personally online, but it's important to remember that there's always more to the story.
Exactly.
So we're tuning in to the subtle cues, practicing active listening, flexing our empathy muscles.
Yeah.
I feel like we're really starting to get the social awareness thing.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, so what's next?
Well, once you start to develop those social awareness skills, you'll naturally start to excel at the final skill of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Relationship management.
Okay, so now we're going to learn how to actually build those strong connections.
Exactly.
I can't wait to learn more about that, but I think we need to save that for part 3.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into emotional intelligence. And we're back for the final leg of our journey, exploring emotional intelligence. And now we're going to be talking about relationship management.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like the culmination of everything we've been talking about so far.
Right, like we've learned about self-awareness and how to understand our own emotions. We've talked about self-management and how to control our impulses and reactions.
Yeah.
And we just finished talking about social awareness, so we know how to read other people's emotions.
Right.
So now it's time to put it all together and learn how to use all of that to build strong, healthy relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Relationship management is all about navigating those complex interactions with other people.
And we're still in this digital age, so how do we make sure that we're building those strong relationships even when we're communicating through screens?
Well, a lot of the same principles apply whether you're interacting online or offline.
Okay.
It's still about clear communication, empathy, and respect.
So how do we do that online? What are some specific tips for communicating clearly and effectively through email, text, social media, all that stuff?
Well, first of all, be mindful of your tone.
Right, because it's so easy to misinterpret things online.
Exactly. You don't have those nonverbal cues to help you understand the other person's intent.
So what can we do to make sure that our tone is coming across the way we want it to?
Well, one thing you can do is to reread your messages before you send them,
Okay.
just to make sure that they sound the way you want them to sound.
Yeah, like if I'm sending an email to my boss, I probably want to make sure it doesn't sound too casual.
Exactly. Or if you're sending a text to a friend, You might want to make sure it doesn't sound too formal.
Right. Okay, so we're rereading our message, making sure our tone is appropriate. What else?
And be careful with humor.
Oh, yeah, sarcasm doesn't always translate well online.
Exactly. It can be really hard to tell if someone's joking or not when you can't hear their tone of voice.
Right. Okay, so
Right.
we're being mindful of our tone. We're careful with humor. Anything else?
And use emojis thoughtfully. Emojis.
Yeah, they can be a great way to add some personality to your messages
Right.
and to clarify your tone.
But like you said before, we got to use them carefully.
Exactly. Make sure they're appropriate for the situation and the audience.
Okay, so clear communication is key. But what about conflict? It's bound to happen in any relationship. So how do we handle that effectively?
Well, the first step is to try to see the situation from the other person's perspective.
Oh, yeah. Empathy.
Exactly. Put yourself in their shoes
Yeah.
and try to understand why they might be feeling the way they're feeling.
Okay, and then what?
And then communicate your own perspective clearly and respectfully.
Okay, so we're basically having an open and honest conversation
Exactly.
where both people feel heard and understood.
Right. And it's important to remember that conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Really?
Yeah, if it's handled constructively, it can actually strengthen a relationship.
Wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to learn more about each other and to grow together. Okay, so we're communicating clearly, we're practicing empathy, we're handling conflict effectively.
Mhm.
Anything else we need to know about relationship management?
Well, one thing that's really important is to just stay connected.
Okay.
Make an effort to reach out to the people you care about regularly.
Like sending a text or making a phone
Dress
call.
up, or even just liking their posts on social media.
Right. Just
Yeah.
little things to let them know you're thinking about them.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything big or elaborate.
Just those little gestures can go a long way.
Exactly. And that's what relationship management is all about. It's about putting in the effort to build and maintain strong, healthy connections with the people in our lives.
And that's really what makes life so rich and meaningful.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredible journey exploring emotional intelligence.
It has.
We've learned so much about ourselves and about how to interact with others in a more positive and productive way.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think we all have.
Me too.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it really has. And we hope you'll continue to explore this fascinating world of emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting with the people around you.
And on that note, we'll see you next time for another deep dive.